Hereby call the February Finance Committee meeting to order. How many public speakers do we have?
We have 3 public speakers today.
Okay, let's hear them.
The first public speaker is Jason Anthony, who will be followed by Charlton D'Souza.
Hey, Haida. Hey, Kevin, and the rest of the Finance Committee meeting. Hey, Neil. Jason Anthony here from the Long Island Railroad 88 Task Force. Let's talk about congestion pricing. Kevin, I have news for you. Since I spoke at the New Jersey Transit's last board meeting, I got very interesting surprises. And is that since that they're proposing a 15% fare hike, but get this, Kevin, they're going to do a 3% annual fare increases in addition to the 15. So instead of the 4% biannual fare and toll increases that you and your team have implemented over here, so their fare and toll fare increase over there so is double. But the interesting thing is that they don't want to settle the lawsuit that they have against us. And the interesting thing is that they lack of transparency. We never saw the data that they presented. But at the end of the day, Kevin, you're doing an amazing job here at the MTA. I couldn't be more prouder with you and your team. We hope that this lawsuit gets settled once and for all, because all the projects that I saw that Jamie and his team presented are going to be halted with this lawsuit. So I hope that you and your team get together with them and settle this lawsuit once and for all. So I'll see you guys on Wednesday.
Thank you. Our second speaker is Charlton D'Souza, who will be followed by Maddie Buckhees-Hyland.
Good afternoon, guys. Charlton D'Souza, President of Passengers United. So, we need a weekly city ticket. You know, we spoke to the elected officials. We've been up there. And again, you guys are proposing the congestion pricing. Everything's going through the motions with the lawsuits. But the question has to be for the MTA. How do you get millions of people out of their cars? You're going to need discounts. You're going to need incentives. You have to get the city ticket program weekly going, and you have to get it going for the summer. That's what I would say to you, because the E and F trains are unreliable. The 2 trains in the Bronx are breaking down. People are being left stranded, and we need equity. And a lot of bus trips are going missing because of the bus driver shortage, which isn't really talked about. Express bus trips are missing every day. So the miracle to provide service, you know, y'all have to do a major recruiting effort to get people to want to work for transit. And right now, with all the safety things and everything happening, that's a challenge. So the existing infrastructure as it is right now will not be able to handle all these people, you know, coming out of their cars in the subway. So you're going to have to fill up the express buses, the railroads. And I think if you make the fare for the express buses like $4.50 and maybe $3.75 for the railroads, that'll get people excited. So that, you know, I've been at all these meetings begging you guys, nothing happens. So I just hope it happens, and we'll be up in Albany speaking with the legislatures like we did last year. So we just need the board, you know, and everyone to get it going. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Our final speaker is Maddie Buckhees-Hyland.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Matty W. Buckhees-Hyland here in my house in Florida. Anyway, for today's topic, I want to speak today about the congestion pricing concerns that has been raised by my fellow speakers in the past committees. I'm the only one that spoke at all 6 committees today. We have issues regarding, I have an issue regarding, well, I do support having less cars on the road. And yes, I do believe the threat of climate change is real. I do oppose the threat. I do oppose the price of the congested pricing at $15. The only no vote was from Commissioner David Mack, who's my county representative for Nassau County. Anyway, I hope everyone had a great day, and I invite you all tomorrow to attend the New Jersey Turnpike Authority meeting in Woodbridge, New Jersey. I'll start at 9 a.m. at 1 Turnpike Plaza in Woodbridge, New Jersey. Anyway, please have a safe evening, get home safe, and may God bless each and every one of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That concludes the public speakers portion of the agenda, Mr. Chairman.
All right, David, thank you very much. Do we
That's
not
me,
have
too.
minutes this month?
Later on the
Later?
agenda.
Later?
On the agenda, yes.
I don't remember that. Why is that? Just for
I
fun?
don't control the agenda. That's
You
how it was
don't?
decided.
I guess I do? Did I ask for the minutes?
I
to be-
think it was made to be consistent with all the committees.
All right, that's very confusing. Yeah, can I just do the thing? I'm reading this. Yeah, let's do the minutes, damn it. Let's do. Oh, sorry. Sorry. Oh my God. Wow, we're working blue here, aren't we? Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I'm just kidding around. Anyway, can I have a motion to approve the January 2024 minutes of the Finance Committee?
So moved.
Thank you, Haider. Second. Thank you, Sammy. Any additions, corrections, deletions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye, opposed, abstention, motion passes. Thank you very much. Okay, monthly financial performance report is in your books. This is the second month we're doing this new format. Hopefully, any comments about the format, by the way? Anyone miss Budget Watch and Finance Watch? Thing of the past, I guess. All right, David, take us through the budget portion, please.
January 2024 preliminary results compared to the adopted budget were favorable by $15 million, or 2%. Operating revenues were $18 million, or 3% unfavorable, with passenger revenue unfavorable by $18 million, or 5%. Toll revenue favorable by $4 million, or 2%, and other operating revenue unfavorable by $5 million, or 7%. The unfavorable passenger revenue variance primarily reflects unfavorable paid ridership for New York City Transit bus, with New York City Transit Subway and Staten Island Railway also unfavorable due to lower than anticipated paid ridership. As a reminder, the adopted budget includes below the line a farebox revenue loss provision of $100 million for 2024 to offset unfavorable farebox revenue results. Toll revenue was $4 million favorable for January. The 2024 adopted budget for farebox revenue is based on the midpoint of the McKinsey prepared high case and low case scenarios. In January, passenger revenues were slightly below the midpoint, 70.8% versus 71.7% when compared to January 2019. Passenger revenues were $125 million, or 26% below farebox revenue in January 2019, while toll revenue exceeded the January 2019 revenue by $10 million, or 7%. These changes from 2019 are adjusted to account for rate changes in both fares and tolls since January 2019. Operating subsidies were $19 million, or 6% favorable in January, primarily reflecting favorable petroleum business tax receipts of $36 million due to December 2023 receipts not transferred to the MTA until early January. However, unfavorable results were recorded for the urban tax of $14 million, the mortgage recording tax of $14 million, and city subsidy at MTA bus for $2 million. City subsidy is a timing issue. Capital subsidies for January from the real property transfer tax surcharge, the mansion tax, and the internet marketplace tax were on target with the adopted budget. Operating expenses were favorable by $13 million, or 1%. Underruns were at all agencies except New York City Transit and FimTech. Preliminary analysis indicates that overall the favorable results were mostly timing related. Debt service expenses was $1 million, or less than 1% favorable, reflecting timing of accruals related to certain refundings and interest payments, and to timing of an actual bond issuance in January versus assumed timing in the adopted budget, and there's further detail in the financial performance report. And that's the operating budget portion of the report.
Yeah, thank you, David. Look, for those of you spending a little time in the report and I at least focus, probably maybe more so than necessary, on the midpoint forecast from McKinsey on paid ridership, and I compare it to the subway and the bus ridership in particular, and we are now, I think, 7 months in a row of underneath the midpoint for subway paid ridership, mildly beneath it, but we are particularly below on the bus side, and we all know and have talked many times about the why, but I thought it'd be useful to ask Kevin to give us a little more context, because if you play out this 1 month trend further on Farebox, it will have not a pleasant impact on our P&L at the end of the year. Kevin?
Thanks, Neil. As you stated, our current ridership, mainly on buses and a little bit on subway, is, for January, we're about 18 million below budget. And if stepping back, if you remember how our financial plan is built, is that, at this point, we're expecting gradual increases in paid ridership in 2024, 25, and 2026. To the extent that ridership flattens out, so if we don't see the growth come back, the growth that we have built into the budget in 24, the loss in revenue I estimate to be roughly $250 million for 24, and then we build a larger amounts that. Now remember, David mentioned we've reserved $100 million of assumed loss ridership, mainly because of what we were seeing in buses, but that obviously wouldn't cover the 250. On the good news side is, when you look at the expense savings in January, that almost offset all the revenue loss for January. So we've got to keep a lid on expenses, so forth. As it relates to the subsidies and the dedicated taxes, I'll say the bright spot, and we kind of get daily reports, the payroll mobility tax, it was part of the state's plan, that's actually looking like it's running a little bit better than budget. It's pretty somewhat volatile month to month, but feel good about that. Don't feel so good about the real estate taxes. The mortgage recording taxes are still, there's just not a lot of refinancing activity or people selling their homes. Nobody wants to give up their 3% mortgages. So anyway, kind of bottom line is, Neil's right, is, what we've seen is this somewhat disturbing trend of ridership kind of leveling off at current levels rather than continuing the growth, paid ridership. And so that's some combination of, obviously, if fare evasion was less, our paid ridership would be a lot higher. And, so part of the, I think, our objectives for the year is, can we, have fare evasion, arrested or have it move better? That'll help with paid ridership. Or irrespective of fare evasion, will we continue to get growth in paid ridership? So that's it. So no reason to panic yet. 1 month doesn't make a year. We've got, flexibility built into the budget, but we'll keep reporting out on the trends. And this is kind of this last 10% of ridership growth, over the next 3 years, is, at least based on the recent trend, is going to be a challenge.
Questions? Please.
Obviously, paid ridership on buses is way down. I think the number I've read is 1 in 7 are actually paying, or something like that. Do we have weight sensors on buses to tell us ridership versus the fare box?
Yeah, so I think, and Jay, correct me if I'm wrong, we've got paid ridership about 55% and fare evasion about 45% on buses, and we have automatic people counters. But Jay
We have
can
automatic passenger counts on about 65 to 70% of our buses.
Is that based on weight or an electric eye?
Electric sort of like counter
I
that
see.
tells us when people are boarding and when are exiting. So we use those APC datas to calculate fare evasion against our fare box revenue.
And we have those on SBS and non-SBS buses, right?
I'm not sure on the SBS side, but definitely on the non-SBS sides. I can check for that
Thank you.
information. But like I said, 70% of our buses have that, so we can extrapolate great data, statistically sound, for a fare evasion analysis.
Thanks. And as
Just want you to know, if you're suggesting pay by the pound, I'm very against that.
no, I wasn't suggesting that.
That was your, that's what you're getting ready for? I saw you getting ready for a comment. Go ahead. Hold on. Go ahead.
I ride the subways very frequently, and I cannot take a trip without seeing multiple incidents of fare evasion.
Yeah.
So I have asked repeatedly when, and I'm happy to hear there's an RFI out on the new turnstiles we saw at the end of the blue ribbon panel, and I think those will pay for themselves. They'll stop crime. They'll help pay for themselves if we can get those new turnstiles in.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Andrew. And I think we as a committee have a obligation to protect the P&L of this entity, and to do that, we have to find a way to promote and frankly figure out how do we fund that. Other questions for on budget?
You know
I
what-
just want to add,
Yeah.
SBS buses do have APC on it.
Great, thank you, Jay.
Yeah, I did want to comment that, we are seeing a somewhat different story on the commuter rails, where they're above the midpoint on paid ridership. And so, I think that's a sign that the kind of a sign of confidence of people coming into the city, using the service, the high level of service we provide, so forth and so on. So, it is somewhat of a mixed bag of results, but subway and buses is such a large part of our customer base. We have to get it right in subways and buses.
And if you ride on weekends, you'll see that for discretionary travel, the trains are packed.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if this is for you, Kevin, or for Jay. What is the total revenue on a full year basis for the fare increase that we've gotten through? Just roughly.
I think fare and tolls is roughly $250 to
50.
$300 million.
Okay, well, it's kind of interesting that number is kind of the same as the shortfall that we're talking about. So if we could I'm just trying to make an argument to the public who is in part here, that if you paid your fare, we probably wouldn't have the same pressure we have on the top line. Not that we wouldn't do that because it's necessary for the budget, but looking at this, the fare evasion problem actually makes it much worse for us to close the gap and makes the pressure on raising fares that much greater. So I want to make that clear. Olga, over to you, please.
Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. Today, I will highlight some of the results of a recently executed bond sale, and we'll discuss 3 upcoming transactions expected to be executed in March and April. For additional details on these transactions, please refer to capital financing section on pages 10 and 11 of the Finance Performance Report. Earlier this month, we issued $1.65 billion of Triborough Bridge and Tunnel Authority Sales Tax Revenue Bonds Series 2024A, TBTA Capital Lockbox City Sales Tax. Proceeds of this transaction will be used to finance approved 2020 to 2024 capital program transit and commuter projects. So current capital program projects that have been already committed and are ongoing, as well as to finance a portion of the capital costs of the Central Business District tolling program. There are a couple of things I wanted to highlight for you about this transaction. First, I wanted to acknowledge great work by the MTA finance team, our financial advisor, Prague, and our lead manager on this transaction, Goldman Sachs, on delivering nearly $1.8 billion in funding for the capital program. You might recall that when we discussed this transaction last month, we were talking about an $800 million transaction, and we more than doubled the size of this deal. This is a couple of things. One is volatility in the markets. Had we brought this deal to the market a week earlier, I would have probably reported a much smaller deal. We were incredibly lucky with our timing. There was a rally in treasury markets, and we saw an incredible interest in our bond sale. We were able to capitalize on that by both increasing, more than doubling the size of the bond sale, and we also improved the pricing on the deal. The other point I wanted to highlight is that this bond sale taps out near-term capacity for the TBTA sales tax revenue bonds. But I'm happy to report that the funding delivered to the capital program by this funding source is in line and actually a little bit better than the funding we've modeled for the source. Now on to the upcoming transactions. In March, we expect to issue $500 million of notes for working capital purposes to address intra-year seasonal liquidity needs. We also plan to issue $300 million of notes to fund approved ongoing transit and commuter projects, again, in the current capital program. And both of these transactions will be sold on a competitive basis. And lastly, in April, we expect to issue approximately $1 billion of fixed-rate tax-exempt transportation revenue refunding green bonds, Series 2024A, to refinance outstanding bonds for savings by exercising call rights and running a tender process. This will be the first issuance of transportation revenue bonds since we received upgrades this past fall. And it will be a great opportunity to reintroduce this credit to the market and deliver savings to our budget. This transaction will be led by book running senior manager Jeffries, together with special core senior managers, which are SDVO, BM, and WB and MWB firms, Drexel Hamilton, Rice Financial Products Company, and Stern Brothers. This concludes my reports for today.
Thank you, Olga. Questions? Ada?
I have a question. So Olga, thank you very much. You said that part of the proceeds are going to fund a portion of the capital costs of the Central Business District tolling program. So is that to set up the cameras and stuff that we need, or is that the actual, what is that?
Yeah, this is to finance the infrastructure, so the readers, right, that will read the license plates for vehicles entering the CBDT area.
So not all of them have been put up yet already?
Yeah, this project is ongoing.
Right, okay.
Yes, so we progressing with installing the infrastructure, and as that work is being done, we need to
Pay
finance the
for it?
costs of
Okay,
it.
great. Okay, thank you.
Norman?
Yeah, I apologize if I'm way off base with my question, because, I mean, this is an area, I mean, usually my questions, believe it or not, there's a base in technical competence, but in your area, I have no base, I have no foothold of technical competence. So were we to notice a reflection of the Jersey lawsuit in the price of bonds, when would that occur, and on what type of bond would that, I mean, I'm assuming it would not be the transportation revenue bonds. Would you start seeing that effect in the summer? Could it be like a crisis if we couldn't do the, a bigger crisis than we already have, that we couldn't do congestion pricing? When would that occur, and what would be the nature of that?
So I would say that the main impact on the financing program would be our ability to issue bonds against the CBDT revenue. So, you know, just as with the capital program impact, where the ongoing litigation puts at risk the schedule for capital programs, it puts at risk our schedule for receiving the funds and issuing bonds against this revenue source. And as you know, in the capital program, when it was approved, we expected to receive $15 billion of funding out of CBDT revenue. So that's the main impact of the litigation.
So look, I was going to ask Kevin to talk about this anyway today. Given what we know is happening with this suit, there's lots of contracts and lots of work that have to be done here, and frankly, that is getting in the way of our business. And I think it's worth talking about because borrowing our way to things that we were going to actually run through, if you will, central business tolling is very difficult. I think I did ask Kevin, though, and I'd love him to describe, maybe just a recap for all of us on the basic economics of how, if we generate $1 billion on an annual run rate basis from central business district tolling, how that translates into the roughly $15 billion of borrowing. I think that would be just a good brief tutorial for all of us.
Thanks, Neil. Before I answer that question, I just wanted to add a little bit, because Olga's correct, and you heard it in Capital Committee, that since of the uncertainty of congestion pricing is making us hold up on moving forward on the similar amount of projects, because you can't commit to a contract unless you have the funding reasonably in place. And so, on the one hand, that'll say, okay, well, the bonds that we're going to be issued, which I'll explain in a second, that'll be backed by congestion pricing, we can't move forward on. I think the other interesting point that you raised in your question is when you think about it, the rating agencies upgraded MTA's overall transportation credit based on the solution to the operating budget. And, part of what makes MTA viable is not only balancing the budget, but, operating, reliable service and so forth. So to the extent we had, the delay starts delaying, what we need for state of good repair projects, and we start to backslide into 2017, that's not going to, in terms of, reliability, that's not going to, lead to, good feeling among investors about, about MTA's overall stability. So I think it's important that we can't have a long pause in doing very important projects without it starting to impact. Again, in terms of, when you think about congestion pricing, essentially, if you're assuming $1 billion a year, roughly for every month we're delayed, that's going to be 80 to 100 million in revenue that we won't have. As Heda pointed out, we're actually issuing debt for all the infrastructure that we're putting in place, which I think is at about 90% now, if I'm correct. And we're now continue to make payments under those contracts. But the lack of the congestion pricing revenue means that debt has to be paid from somewhere else. It can't be paid or reimbursed from the congestion pricing revenue, which just further, restricts our resources. So that said, once, the reason how we turn the billion into 15 billion is that, once we have, clearance that the revenue starts to flow, we'll have roughly that billion a year that we could put directly into project spending. Obviously, we're not going to wait 15 years to do that 15 billion in projects. So every year, depending on we will commit for the 15 billion in projects, but based on the cash flow spending, we'll have to, we'll borrow against that. And at some point, a few years down the road, maybe of that, $1 billion in revenue, half of it will be going to pay debt service on bonds we issued to fund the projects early, and half will still be available for paying for current expenses. So when you kind of do the rough math, and again, I don't think we're going to issue 15 billion in debt, because while we're moving, we're going to use some of the revenue to fund the projects directly. But if we issue, say, 10 billion in debt, 4% interest, that's about 400 million of of interest, add into it maybe 100 million of principal, so out of the billion, we'll, using some to pay the debt service that helped us to pay for projects early, and some will be, going directly to pay for projects. I don't know if that's a good explanation.
It's very helpful. Any questions on the economics of how a dollar becomes $15? No? Okay, great. David, headquarters and agency items, please.
There's one action item this month to obtain MTA board approval of resolutions to certify and transfer $1.289 billion of TBTA operating surplus to the MTA and New York City Transit pursuant to Section 1219-A2B of the Public Authorities Law. Transfer $12.4 million representing 2023 investment income to the MTA pursuant to Section 569C of the Public Authorities Law, and advance 2024 TBTA surplus as per the attached resolution. And Jim McGovern, the MTA controller, is available if there are any questions.
Okay. Can I have a motion, please? Thank you. Second? Thank you. Any questions, comments, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstention, motion passes. Thank you very much. We don't have any MTA procurements that I know of. We'll have some agency ones shortly. Jay, you want to take us through the weighty topic of the February financial plan?
Sure. This month includes the February financial plan, which contains the 2023 final estimate, the 2024 adopted budget, and the financial plan for 2024 to 2027. The 24 adopted budget remains at the $19.3 billion level. The financial plan is balanced annually through 2027, and it's presented as we discussed in November and December, and also adopted in December. Included in the February financial plan are a handful of technical adjustments that we made. They're non-financial in nature, just, account moving. The financial plan also includes a schedule detailing the agency's monthly allocation of financials, headcount. It also includes ridership and fare box revenue by each agency. It's based on the 2024 adopted budget. This allows for us to report monthly on actuals against budget for the variances that we discuss. In the coming months, in preparation, we'll be preparing for the July plan, which will have an update for you for 2024 and the upcoming budget for 2025.
Questions for Jay? Obviously, good news on a continued balanced budget pursuant to the things we spoke about a little bit ago. Okay, back to you, David.
The second information item is to inform the Finance Committee of the MTA Board about the statutorily required MRT2 escalator payments as stipulated in Section 1270-A4C of the Public Authorities Law to Dutchess, Orange, and Rockland counties totaling $6.424 million, which are expected to be made in March 2024. These escalator payments are in addition to the quarterly required payments, also as stipulated in Section 1270-A4C of the Public Authorities Law, and Olga is available if there are any questions.
Anyone? Okay, hearing none, let's go to agency procurements. Lou?
Good afternoon, thank you. There are two information items for Long Island Railroad and Metro North Railroad this month that were approved by their respective committees earlier today. The first is a request that the board approve the award of a 10-year original equipment manufacturer purchase agreement for M7 propulsion system equipment upgrade as well as bench test equipment to Mitsubishi Electric Power Products, Inc. The second item, also to Mitsubishi, is a request that the board approve a 5-year contract for HVAC and propulsion replacement parts utilized on Long Island Railroad's M7 electric rail cars and Metro North's M7 and M8 electric cars. This will also include the needs of New York City Transit subway car fleet. There are no information items for MTA headquarters this month, no information items for New York City Transit this month, no information items for Metro North Railroad this month, and there are no information items for bridges and tunnels this month.
Can I have a motion on no items, please? Haha, just kidding around. Okay, David, bring us home with real estate, please.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Real estate has
4 transactional action items for consideration and approval. There are 2 items for the MTA. The first is a license renewal with Communications Leasing for an MTA Police Department antenna at 1 Fairchild Court in Plainview. The second is a license with Web Food Products for MTA Police Department vehicle parking at 143-19 94th Avenue in Jamaica. The third item is for MTA New York City Transit and is leased for Beerlandia Corp. For the operation of a restaurant at the Coney Island Stillwell Avenue Station in Brooklyn. The fourth and final item is for MTA Metro North and is a license renewal with Gin CT LLC for employee parking at 120 Viaduct Road in Stamford. There were 4 information items. Want me to go through this right now? Okay. The 3 information items are for MTA New York City Transit. One is a temporary access agreement with Queens Ballpark Company for access to property adjacent to the Corona substation in connection with the substation hardening project in Queens. And there's a license with Shoshama for the installation, maintenance, and display of artwork in 3 New York City Transit stations. And the last for transit is a license with City DOT for signage removal, installation, operation, and maintenance at the St. George Ferry Terminal in Staten Island. And the final item is for MTA Long Island Railroad. It's a permanent easement agreement with MD Hosan and Soraya Hosan to facilitate the installation of an aerial platform of a property adjacent to the Long Island right-of-way in connection with the Jamaica Capacity Improvement Project in Jamaica, Queens.
All right, thank you, David. Just going back, there are 4 action items for us, 2 for the MTA, 1 for transit, and 1 for Metro North for real estate. May I have a motion to approve those?
I have a question.
Please.
The antenna, why do we need an antenna in Plainview?
It's a renewal of an existing antenna. As part of the PD maintains 12 sites in the region for the MTA Police Department network. This is an existing site that they're renewing in place.
Okay. And just point information, I asked David to get me some information on the ballpark company access, and he's going to get back to me on that. Thank you.
Sorry, he did not, or he
No,
did?
no, he will.
Oh, he
Get
will.
back to me.
Okay, are you okay to vote on it?
We're not voting,
It's
they're
an
information.
information
Oh,
item.
the information, sorry, fine. Okay, so back to the 4 items for voting action. I may have a motion to approve.
Motion.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on these 4 items? Hearing none. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Any new business for the committee? Hearing none. A motion to adjourn. Thank you. Second. Thank you very much. Well done. Thank you, staff. Take care.